5 reincarnation stories that will make you believe. Takeharu. Our first account is certainly a strange one, and like many cases of reincarnation, comes from a child whose earliest memories were from some apparent past life, recalling facts and events that they couldn't possibly have known about. Born in Hiroshima, Japan, on the 12th of May 2012, Takeharu was by all accounts a happy, healthy child, one of 3 boys. Their father, Kisuke, was a dentist, and Yuki, their mother, a high school teacher, and the religion the family practiced had no belief in reincarnation. Neither his parents or his elder siblings were interested in history or military matters, and in contrast, held quite strong anti-war values, given the traumatic history of their home city. Yet, from a very early age, Takeharu displayed some rather odd characteristics. He was fixated on playing with a toy ship when in the bath, as many children do. Yet, he would always end his playtime by sinking the ship as though it had been attacked. When he learned to talk, he repeatedly told his parents, "I want to see the Yamato." The Yamato in question was the largest battleship of the Imperial Japanese Navy during the Second World War, proudly deemed the most powerful battleship that ever existed, at a whopping 862 feet long and weighing over 71,000 tons fully loaded. The only problem? Yamato rests over 1,000 feet under the East China Sea, where it has lain undisturbed for the past 79 years. Attacked by American forces on April 7, 1945, the Yamato and 6 other battleships were sunk en route from Okinawa in a furious battle that saw the behemoth itself being hit with no less than 10 torpedoes, resulting in only 269 of the original 3,332 crew living to tell the tale. Takeharu's parents were of course confused, but dutifully took their son to the Kyoto Maritime Museum to view the 1/10th scale model of the infamous battleship. Yet, rather than being satisfied, Takeharu was quite the opposite, telling them it's a fake. The Yamato was much, much bigger. From this moment on, the young boy would often recount memories and sinister anecdotes as his speech improved, such as, "I was drowned. It, the ship, exploded. I died at 19, and I made my mum cry. I won't make her cry this time." Naturally worried, in 2020, Yuki contacted a researcher interested in past life cases and reincarnation, who then conducted a number of studies alongside Yuki and her son, including asking Takeharu to write down or draw all of his memories, and unknowingly showing him random naval pictures and manifests, as well as the real ones of the Yamato's final crew. Inexplicably, Takeharu pointed out one individual and said, "I know this person." The very same person had been killed manning one of the ship's guns, in the same section Takeharu claimed to have died in his past life. We'll leave this one up to you. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and drop any reasons you think could explain Takeharu's extraordinary claims. David Moquin. In contrast to our previous case, this following reincarnation incident occurred when the individual was an adult and had no previous experiences until a very close brush with death. Hospitalized with a severe case of double pneumonia at 48, David Moquin slipped into a coma and was not expected to pull through. Yet miraculously he recovered and brought back with him a very strange story. David claimed to have experienced burning to death inside a crashed fighter plane. "I kept seeing myself on fire and trying to reach a field just past a line of trees and a barbed wire type fence. I crashed, hit my head, and tried to crawl out of the cockpit as I was engulfed in fire and couldn't breathe. Logically, It's easy to interpret this as a simple nightmare, induced by the traumatic coma and subsequent cocktail of medication. Yet David could also recall specific dates. He believed he died on a specific date in November 1944, as well as the names of his wing commander, squadron commander, mother, and father. A while later, his daughter decided to research the date out of curiosity, and was stunned to find that there was only one plane that had crashed that day in November 44. A P-51 Mustang flown by 27-year-old Captain Earl Robert Fryer of the United States Air Force, who'd been forced to crash land his fighter in a field in Holland after coming under heavy enemy fire, where it had then erupted in flames, killing Fryer. All of David's recollections added up. Fryer's parents had the correct names he'd remembered, as did his US Air Force crewmates, and even the location of the crash. Stranger still, David had been born in December 1944, just 1 month after Fryer's tragic death. Could he be the American ace fighter pilot reincarnate? Rhonda Mead. Shortly before her death from a stroke, native Canadian grandmother Susan Albert publicly wished to her family that she would be reborn as her pregnant granddaughter's child. 3 months later, Susan's granddaughter gave birth to a little girl named Rhonda, who coincidentally had a birthmark on her right wrist that closely resembled a tattoo her great-grandmother had in the exact same spot. Further to this, Rhonda could pick out jewellery and other items that had belonged to Susan, and could recall the unique name of her great-grandmother's dog, $7, who died long before she was even born. When she was 15 months old, the family visited relatives in Vancouver for the first time, over 750 miles away. But when Rhonda saw her uncle sitting in an easy chair, she became irate and outraged, trying to push him out of it while screaming, "That's my chair," despite not being able to climb up into it. In a strange twist of circumstance, this easy chair had actually been Susan's favourite, and she'd let nobody else sit in it, even whilst she was out of the house or away. As she grew older, Rhonda's peculiar behaviour and memories disappeared, but the question still remained. Did Susan Albert return as her granddaughter's child? Let us know what you think. James Leininger. Perhaps one of the most well-known of the 5 cases, due to its feature on a documentary in the early 2000s, the experience of James Leininger is still as convincing today as when it was first reported. From as early as he could talk, Leininger often referred to some past versions of himself, snippets of a confusing narrative that suggested he'd been in some sort of plane crash in the water. When he was around 2 years old, he began experiencing vivid nightmares, where he would scream phrases like, "Airplane crash on fire," and "Little man can't get out." Initially thinking it was a phase, his parents became alarmed when he began to act out plane crashes with his toys, and began to often talk about explosions and being unable to escape. Alarm then turned to curiosity when James claimed to have been previously named James and had flown a Corsair with flat tyres on the Natoma with his squadron mate Jack Larson, all specific details that he wouldn't have picked up on in school or from his family. When James pointed to a picture of Iwo Jima in a World War II book, saying, "My aeroplane got shot down there, Daddy," his father decided to investigate. He uncovered that there surprisingly had been a US Navy aircraft carrier called the USS Natoma Bay, and it had been in action around Iwo Jima in the infamous battle against the Japanese in 1945. In addition to this, F-4U Corsair fighter bombers had also flown from the Natoma during the battle, and were notorious for getting blowouts or flats following rough or heavy carrier deck landings. But most compelling of all was that a James M. Houston had truly served aboard the carrier, and was the only Natoma airman to be killed in the battle. Through further research, James's father discovered that Jack Larson had also been real, and even more crazy, he was still living. Getting in touch with Larson, he shared his son's story with the fascinated former Navy pilot, who recalled the day's actions. Larson had flown right alongside Houston and actually witnessed the 21-year-old's untimely death in a crash that was exactly as James had described. He was struck in the engine, which caused his plane to catch fire and smash into the water. Are you convinced? How else could such distinctive memories and tragic details be explained? Robert Snow. I have accomplished something that no one has ever accomplished before. I have uncovered evidence that provides beyond a doubt the existence of a past life. It's so overwhelming that if it had been a criminal case, there would be no plea bargaining. A conviction would be assured. These are the bold words with which former Indianapolis Police Captain Robert Snow opens his book about the investigation into his past life. Once a staunch skeptic, Snow's chance encounter with a psychology specialist who had also conducted regression sessions turned him into a believer. Whilst attending a party, Snow overheard a psychologist discussing popular cases they'd studied, as well as personal experiences whilst conducting what are known as past life regression sessions, a form of hypnosis or guided meditation aimed at uncovering memories or experiences from an individual's supposed past lives. Naturally a skeptical man, given the nature of his police career, Snow refuted the psychologist's claims, calling into question the science of the act and expressing his belief that it was merely indulging others' fantasies and even outright lies. Understandably frustrated, the psychologist dared Robert to undergo a session if, as he claimed, it was all fabricated. He agreed, more so out of refusing to back down to a dare than actually expecting any flashbacks or previous life memories. When the session was conducted, Robert claims that for the first half hour or so, nothing happened at all, and he was tempted to call it quits before the full session was through. Suddenly, he was thrust into a series of vivid and full sensory encounters, experiencing not just one, but numerous past life narratives, the strongest of which was a vision of one former self painting a hunchbacked woman, complete with detailed paint strokes. Upon emerging from the regression, Snow was confused and still not entirely sure what had just happened. He could not recall any name or physical details of his apparent past self, but could uncannily recollect at least 28 significant memories from his life, such as he had used a walking stick, was happily married but his wife was unable to have children. He had spent considerable time in France and owned an artist's studio with a large skylight and a row of windows, yet the couple were often desperate for money. Perhaps most eerie was the knowledge that he had died in the autumn of 1917 in a large city with tall buildings. Despite this, Robert was still unconvinced and approached the strange situation as he would a police investigation, writing reports on his recollections and vainly concocting potentially normal explanations, examining books on art and painting styles, and visiting art galleries in the hopes of an answer. Who was I? On a completely unrelated whim, his wife suggested they visit New Orleans for their anniversary. Yet it was here, inside an art gallery in the French Quarter, that Snow came unexpectedly face to face with the portrait of the hunchbacked woman, and with it, the artist's name. James Carroll Beckwith. A celebrated American painter born in 1852, Beckwith actually had lived in Paris from 1873 until 1878, and had then lived in an artist's studio upon his return to the United States. He'd married a woman called Bertha Hall in 1887, and the couple never had any children. Creepily, the 65-year-old painter did indeed die on October 24th, 1917, suffering a heart attack inside his apartment in New York City, a place known for its towering buildings. Trawling through both an unpublished diary and unfinished autobiography of Beckwith's held by the National Academy of Design in New York, Robert established that a shocking 26 of his 28 distinct memories could be confirmed, despite much of it either not being public knowledge or Beckwith's own private ruminations. So, is there evidence of reincarnation? Or merely one of the world's weird episodes of coincidences at play? We'll leave that for you to decide.